You're looking at a full engine rebuild, friend. $5,700. My name's Walter. I'm 47, and for the past 8 years, I've been writing software for Veltri Dynamics in Phoenix. But before I ever touched a keyboard, I spent 15 years with grease under my fingernails. I held every automotive certification the state offered, could tear down a transmission blindfolded, and built my first engine when I was 16. That knowledge never left me, even after I traded coveralls for a desk job. That morning, I brought my Honda to Rodriguez Auto Repair on West Thomas Road for nothing more than an oil change and inspection. The car ran perfectly fine, started every morning, never gave me trouble in the 3 years I'd owned it. But Tony Rodriguez, the shop owner, clearly had other plans. He let me into the service bay where my car sat with the hood open. "See this?" he said, pointing at the dipstick. The oil on it was dark, thick, and sludgy. "Your head gasket's blown. Oil's mixing with coolant. Engine's shot." I kept my face neutral, even though I knew exactly what I was looking at. I changed that oil myself 2 weeks ago. Synthetic blend, golden brown, right at the proper level. The stuff Tony showed me wasn't for my car. It looked like it had been sitting in a dirty shop pan for months. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked calmly. "Means your engine block's cracked. Metal shavings everywhere. If you keep driving, you'll seize the motor completely," he said, shaking his head with rehearsed sympathy. "Lucky you brought it in when you did." I played along. "How long would a rebuild take?" "A week, maybe 10 days. Big job. Got to order parts, machine the block," he explained, growing more confident with every word. I scratched my chin, pretending to consider it. "That's a lot of money." He leaned closer. "Listen, Walter," he glanced at my paperwork. "I could try to patch it temporarily, but it'll fail within a month. Then you're looking at a full engine replacement. 8-9 grand easy." The man was smooth. No doubt he'd been pulling this scam for years. What he didn't know was that I could spot a blown head gasket from 50 feet away, and my car showed none of the symptoms. No white smoke, no coolant loss, no rough idle, no mixing of fluids. "Whatever you recommend," I said finally. "You're the expert." Tony's smile widened. "Smart choice. I'll get the paperwork started." As he walked toward the office, I glanced back at my car. The engine bay was spotless, exactly as I'd left it. No leaks, no stains, no trouble. Tony Rodriguez had just made the biggest mistake of his career. He tried to become a certified mechanic. I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where my dad ran a small garage behind our house. He taught me engines, but more than that, he taught me integrity. "People trust you with their safety and their savings," he'd say while I held the flashlight. "Never take advantage. A customer's trust is worth more than gold." That philosophy carried me through technical school, apprenticeships, and 15 years at Henderson Motors. I built a reputation on honesty, fixing cars one at a time. But the industry changed. Corporate chains took over, independents struggled, and good mechanics became harder to find. When Veltri Dynamics offered me a software position, I took it. Better pay, cleaner hands. But I never forgot where I came from. My old toolbox still sat in my garage, every wrench in its place. I still worked on my own cars, helped neighbors, and sometimes missed the satisfaction of fixing something real. What I never missed were the dishonest shop owners who gave the profession a bad name. And Tony Rodriguez was exactly that type. I'd driven past his shop countless times. The flashy waiting area, the expensive equipment, too much show for a neighborhood garage. It screamed overhead costs and desperate pressure to make money, honest or not. That night, after agreeing to his bogus repair, I went online and started digging. The reviews told the whole story. Elderly customers blindsided with costly emergencies, students hit with thousands in unnecessary repairs, families paying for problems that didn't exist. One review stuck out. "Brought my grandmother's car in for brake pads. They said the transmission was failing and charged her $4,000. 6 months later, the car still runs perfectly fine." Tony Rodriguez thought he was running a slick operation. What he didn't know was that he'd picked the wrong customer to scam. Another customer wrote about stopping in for a quick oil change during a road trip. The shop told them their engine was about to seize and needed immediate repairs. Instead, they drove 50 miles to another mechanic, who found nothing wrong at all. The pattern was obvious. Tony preyed on people who couldn't easily verify his claims or get second opinions. He had confidence, a polished setup, and just enough technical knowledge to sound convincing. But greed had made him careless. I printed out the most damaging reviews and put them in a folder. Then I called the Arizona Department of Consumer Affairs to ask about reporting automotive fraud. The woman on the line sounded tired, like she'd heard this story 100 times. "We get dozens of complaints about repair shops every month," she said. "The problem is proving intent to defraud. Most cases come down to one person's word against another's. But what if someone had documentation?" I asked. "Video evidence, recordings?" Her tone shifted. "That would be different. With hard proof, we could actually build a case." I hung up and stared at my toolbox. Looked like I was back into business, at least temporarily. The next morning, Tony called with an update. "Bad news, Walter. It's worse than I thought." I sat in my cubicle, watching code compile on my monitor. "How much worse?" "Found metal shavings in the oil pan. Pistons are scored too. You'll need a complete rebuild. Block, heads, pistons, everything. We're talking $6,500 now." Just like that, the price had jumped another $900. I kept my voice calm. "When can you start?" "Soon as you approve the work order. I'll email it over." 10 minutes later, the document hit my inbox, stuffed with intimidating technical terms and part numbers. Cylinder head resurfacing, piston ring replacement, crankshaft grinding. All completely unnecessary for an engine that ran flawlessly. At the bottom, in bold, total cost, $6,500. I stared at the screen. This wasn't just fraud. It was organized theft. Tony had turned auto repair into a racket, milking people's savings through lies and scare tactics. How many customers had he scammed? How many retirees had drained their accounts because of him? The anger built slowly, like pressure in a hydraulic line. My dad would have been disgusted. Every honest mechanic I'd ever worked with would have been ashamed to share a profession with Tony Rodriguez. But anger alone wouldn't stop him. I needed a plan. I called the shop back. "Tony, I've been thinking. That's a lot of money. I understand, Walter, but think of it as an investment. This rebuild will buy you another 100,000 miles. Easy. What about a payment plan? Half now, half once done." Sure. Whatever works. Main thing is getting you back on the road safe." His eagerness gave him away. Any legitimate shop would encourage a second opinion on such an expensive repair. Tony just wanted the cash, fast. "I'll bring the deposit by this afternoon," I said. "Perfect. I'll get started right away." After hanging up, I opened a fresh document on my computer. Case file, Rodriguez Auto Repair Fraud Investigation. I logged everything. Tony's diagnosis, his phone calls, the inflated work order. Then I looked up Arizona's recording laws. Single-party consent. That meant I could legally record him without his knowledge. My coworkers kept typing around me, trusting me to solve problems with code. They had no idea I was preparing to solve a very different kind of problem, one with wrenches, records, and evidence. Tony Rodriguez had picked the wrong customer. On the way home, I stopped in an electronics store and bought a $40 digital recorder, the kind journalists use. Insurance against this scam. I clipped it inside my jacket and practiced switching it on without looking. The next time I walked into a shop, I noticed the details more closely. The leather chairs, the flat-screen TV, the fancy coffee machine. Too flashy for a neighborhood garage. It wasn't a repair shop. It was a stage. Theater to sell lies at premium prices. I was about to bring the curtain down. Tony stepped out from the service bay, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "Walter, good to see you. Ready to get that engine sorted out?" I pressed the recorder in my pocket. "Actually, Tony, I've been thinking about this repair. $6,500 is a lot of money. Mind if I take a look at the damage myself?" His smile faltered for a split second before returning. "Of course not. But fair warning, it's pretty technical stuff. Most folks don't really know what they're looking at." He led me over to my Honda, parts conveniently scattered around it. An air filter, spark plugs, even a valve cover. Props for his performance. My engine, of course, had been running perfectly fine when I drove in. "See here." Tony held up a container of dark, sludgy oil. "This came out of your crankcase. Metal particles everywhere. Engine's eating itself alive. I bent down, studying the oil. Old, dirty, but definitely not for my car. And where exactly did you find the metal shavings? Right in the oil pan. Want to see the drain plug? Metal filings stuck right to the magnet. He produced a drain plug covered in metallic debris. It looked convincing, until I noticed the detail he hadn't. Tony, this drain plug doesn't even fit my car. He blinked, caught off guard, glancing between the plug and my engine. Must have grabbed the wrong one. A lot of cars in here, you know how it is. I kept my expression neutral. Can I see the actual plug from my car? That one's already cleaned and reinstalled. Can't take it out again without making a mess, he said quickly. But trust me, it was just as bad. I nodded slowly. And the head gasket failure? Can you show me where the coolant and oil are mixing? Tony hesitated. Already drained all the fluids. But it was obvious. Milky residue in the radiator, oil floating in the coolant reservoir. Classic signs. I like to see the coolant you drained. We recycle all fluids immediately. Environmental regulations, he answered smoothly. Every response was a dodge. Every piece of evidence conveniently out of reach. But he was committed to his story now, convinced I was just another nervous customer stalling before handing over a big check. Walter, I get it, he said, leaning casually against my car. This is a serious repair. But I've been doing this for 20 years. I know engine damage when I see it. You could take it somewhere else for a second opinion, but you'll be paying for a tow truck and another diagnostic. And honestly, any shop will tell you the same thing. I almost smiled. A real mechanic would encourage a second opinion. Tony was so confident in his scam, he didn't think anyone ever would. No, I trust your judgment, I said evenly. You're the professional. I'll get you that deposit check. Relief washed over his face. Smart choice. I'll start ordering parts this afternoon. Should have you back on the road in 8 to 10 days. As I wrote out the $3,250 deposit, he kept chatting about the rebuild process, promising how much better my engine would run. Every word, every lie, was being recorded in crystal clear audio. When I handed him the check and shook his hand, I smiled. Thanks for catching this before it became a bigger problem. That's what we're here for, he replied confidently. Peace of mind. Walking back to my rental car, I checked the recorder. Perfect audio. Tony had just taken my money, certain he'd con me. But what he didn't realize was that he'd also handed me everything I needed to take him down. That evening, I called the Arizona Department of Consumer Affairs and asked to speak with an investigator. Within 20 minutes, I was connected to Detective Maria Gonzalez from the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. Mr. Harris, you mentioned having evidence of automotive fraud, recorded conversations, fake parts, the whole scam documented, she asked. I explained Tony's operation in detail, the contaminated oil, the wrong drain plug, the shifting repair estimates. And how do you know the diagnosis was false? I'm a certified automotive technician with 15 years of experience, I told her. I know what engine damage looks like. My car shows none of the symptoms. Detective Gonzalez was quiet for a moment before asking, would you be willing to work with our office as a cooperating witness? This kind of systematic fraud is exactly what we're trying to stop. What would that involve? I asked cautiously. Continuing to play the customer while we gather evidence, she explained. We'd wire you for conversations. Maybe even have you bring in other vehicles for fake repairs. The goal is to build a comprehensive case. I thought about the elderly customers in the reviews I'd read, and the college students being charged thousands for unnecessary work. How long has Rodriguez been pulling this scam? I asked. We've had complaints about his shop for 3 years, she admitted, but never enough solid evidence to prosecute. If you're willing to help, we could finally shut him down. 2 days later, I met Detective Gonzalez at a coffee shop near my office. She was younger than I expected, mid-30s, with the careful, observant demeanor of someone who'd seen too many scams. She slid a small device across the table. Wireless transmitter, audio and video. Clip it inside your shirt. Press this button to activate. I picked it up, smaller than a matchbook. How many other shops are you investigating? I asked. Rodriguez is part of a larger problem, she said. Arizona has some of the weakest automotive repair regulations in the country. Shops like his are everywhere, targeting tourists and elderly residents. I nodded. So what's the long-term goal here? Criminal charges, civil penalties, license revocation. But for that, we need ironclad evidence, recorded conversations, documented fraud, financial records if we can get them. The plan was simple. I continue acting like the concerned customer while Tony pretended to rebuild my car. Detective Gonzalez and the Attorney General's office would coordinate the investigation, monitoring every step. One more thing, she added before we left. We've identified at least 12 other customers scammed by Rodriguez in the past 6 months. Your case could help us get restitution for all of them. That number hit me hard. 12 families, tens of thousands of dollars stolen. Tony wasn't just a dishonest mechanic. He was running a criminal enterprise. Over the next week, I played my role perfectly. I called Tony for updates, expressed concern about the repair timeline, even brought him coffee during one of my visits. Every conversation was recorded. Every lie documented. As Tony grew comfortable with me, he even started bragging. Most customers don't know a head gasket from a transmission filter, he chuckled one day. They hear engine damage and just want it fixed. People pay for peace of mind. His casual confession, exploiting customer ignorance, was captured in crystal clear audio and video. But the real breakthrough came when I asked to see my car's progress. Tony led me into the service bay. My Honda sat exactly as I left it, untouched. No disassembly, no new parts, no sign of any work. Still waiting on a few components, he said quickly. They'll be here tomorrow. I smiled and nodded, knowing Gonzalez was watching everything through the hidden camera. Tony Rodriguez had just sealed his fate. Detective Gonzalez wasted no time. Within 2 days, she had a warrant to investigate Rodriguez Auto Repair's financial records. The Attorney General's office coordinated with the state licensing board to review his certifications and permits. We found something interesting, she told me at our next meeting. Rod Auto Repair has been reporting revenue that doesn't match their actual customer base. Either they're busier than they appear, or they're generating income through fraudulent repairs. The investigation was no longer just about my case. More victims had come forward after seeing a news story about automotive fraud, each with nearly identical experiences: sudden diagnoses, expensive repairs, unnecessary work. The Attorney General's office was building a case of systematic fraud stretching back 3 years. My role stayed the same: play the customer. I called Tony regularly, asking about parts delivery and repair timelines. Each time, he revealed more of his operation. You made the right choice, Walter, he said during one call. Some guys just patch things up with temporary fixes. That's throwing money away. A rebuild is an investment. On my next visit, I wore both the wire and a hidden camera. Tony proudly showed me parts he claimed were for my engine: pistons, gaskets, bearings, a full rebuild kit. But when I asked to see the part numbers, none matched my Honda specifications. Generic rebuild kit, he explained quickly. Works for most 4-cylinder engines. Another lie caught on camera. Rebuilds require precise, vehicle-specific components. Using generic parts would cause immediate failure and put lives in danger. Detective Gonzalez was building her case carefully. Financial records, customer complaints, video evidence, recorded lies. But she wanted one final piece: catching Tony in the act of presenting false evidence directly to a customer. We need him to show you fabricated damage, she explained. Tony had made one mistake too many. Now I just needed undeniable proof, something that would establish his intent to defraud beyond any reasonable doubt. The opportunity came when Tony called me. Good news, Walter, he said. Found the problem and fixed it. Want to come in tomorrow? I'll show you what we replaced. The next morning, I arrived at Rodriguez Auto Repair. Detective Gonzalez monitored everything from surveillance van across the street. Inside the bay, Tony stood proudly beside my Honda, hood up, with a collection of replaced parts scattered around the engine. Take a look at this, he said, holding up what looked like a burned head gasket. See those marks? Coolant leaking straight into the combustion chamber. A few more 100 miles, and your engine would have locked up completely. The gasket was old and weathered, clearly salvaged from a junkyard. Then he pulled out pistons scored, damaged, and completely the wrong size for my engine. Metal shavings everywhere, he explained. Lucky we caught it in time. He was so confident in his act that he hadn't even bothered to make the evidence believable. Incredible, I said, keeping my tone even. Tony grinned. Most people don't realize how bad it gets. That's why you need professionals like me. That statement sealed it. He admitted, right there, to exploiting customer ignorance while showing me fabricated evidence. Detective Gonzalez had everything she needed. The investigation was finished. Now came the reckoning. 2 days later, Tony called again. Walter, your car's ready. Runs like new. I'll be right over, I replied. Detective Gonzalez and 3 investigators were already in position when I arrived. Tony met me in the waiting room, beaming with confidence, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Let's take her for a test drive, he said, dangling my keys. But before we reached my Honda, the front door opened. Detective Gonzalez walked in with 2 investigators and a uniformed officer. Tony Rodriguez, she said, flashing her badge. Arizona Attorney General's office. You're under arrest for consumer fraud, theft by deception, and operating an unlicensed repair facility. Tony's face drained of color. What? No, this has to be a mistake. No mistake, Gonzalez said, nodding toward me. Mr. Harris has been working with us for the last 2 weeks, documenting your fraudulent practices. Tony stammered. Fraudulent? Walter needed an engine rebuild. I showed him the damage. You showed me fake evidence, I said calmly. Wrong-sized pistons, oil from another vehicle, a head gasket that was never in my car. How did you? I'm a certified automotive technician with 15 years of experience, I said, pulling out my credentials. You picked the wrong customer to scam. Tony staggered back against the counter, speechless. Detective Gonzalez snapped handcuffs onto his wrists. Every conversation, every false diagnosis, every fake part. You're caught on tape. You have the right to remain silent. Tony Rodriguez was sentenced to 5 years in prison in order to pay up to $2 million in restitution after investigators uncovered his long-running scheme. He had defrauded more than 300 customers with fake diagnostics and unnecessary repairs. My undercover recordings became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. His business was shut down, his licenses revoked, and $800,000 in assets seized and distributed to his victims. His wife divorced him, taking the children once she learned their comfortable lifestyle had been funded by fraud. The case became a landmark, leading to tougher consumer protection laws and mandatory certification for auto repair shops. Tony's mugshot was printed in advocacy campaigns, a warning to others about predatory mechanics. Even after prison, his career was over. No legitimate shop would hire him. He was left working minimum wage jobs while facing civil lawsuits from angry former customers. 6 months after his arrest, I received a commendation from the state attorney general. It wasn't a big ceremony, just a quiet gathering in a downtown conference room, but it mattered. 12 more shops were investigated thanks to the Rodriguez case, resulting in arrests and license revocations across the state. The plaque still sits on my desk at Veltri Dynamics. A reminder that sometimes protecting people requires more than coding skills. Sometimes it takes patience, persistence, and the will to stand up against corruption. Because the best revenge isn't getting even. It's making sure the guilty get exactly what they deserve.